Foreign aid is supposed to help the world's poorest, right? But what if I told you that much of it never leaves the donor countries? This is a story of how help became strategy and why it matters today that we talk about it. My name is Dr. Christie Agawu. I'm a researcher and a storyteller. My PhD is in international development. But more importantly, I've spent years exploring who really benefits from aid. This series unpacks the history, contradictions, and possibilities of foreign aid, especially in Africa. After the Second World War, Europe lay in ruins. Cities, economies, and industries had collapsed. Over 70% of its infrastructure, roads, railways, ports, was destroyed. The US launched the Marshall Plan, over $13 billion, about $117 billion today, to rebuild Western Europe. But it wasn't just generosity, it was strategy. It reopened markets for the US, it stabilized allies, and kept communism at bay. When African countries gained independence in the 1950s and the 1960s, donors extended aid to their former colonies, now framed as development. But it often came with strings: military alliances, economic reforms, Cold War loyalty. That legacy still continues. Roads were built, but to mines. Schools opened with foreign curricula. Aid promised partnership, but delivered dependence. Today, we still talk about generosity, but behind the scenes, aid money often flows back to donor country contractors, consultants, and banks. That's boomerang aid. Money that leaves on paper but returns through contracts and fees. Tied aid isn't just a theoretical concern, it creates real costs. The OECD data shows tied aid inflates prices by 15 to 30% and up to 40% for food aid. That's huge for Africa, huge for poor African countries. And though tied aid was supposed to decline, about 20% of all bilateral aid, around $22 billion, say, was still tied in 2019. The US, one of the largest donors, in fact, the largest donor, has only 64% of its aid untied in low-income countries, meaning over 1/3 still benefits donor-based firms. Dambisa Moyo, economist and author of Dead Aid, argues that even well-intentioned aid can foster dependency, stifle innovation, and even undermine development. In fact, she argues that it does undermine development. Another critic, William Easterly, warns that the way aid is designed often prevents it from achieving real impact. Both of them ask the same hard question: who does aid really help? But not all scholars reject aid. Some say it works if the conditions are right. Burnside and Dollar found that aid is far more effective in countries with strong governance and sound policies. Aid works when the soil is ready. Others, like Goimo and Chauvet, argue that aid can still help fragile states by cushioning shocks and helping them weather instability, even when their policies aren't perfect. Yet another, Minu and Reddy, take it further that not all aid is created equal. They argue that long-term development-focused aid for health, for education and infrastructure work, but short-term strategic transactional aid, that hurts. And finally, Wambaka and Mutenyo show that who gives aid matters. Bilateral aid, one country to another, tends to promote growth more consistently, they argue. And they say that multilateral aid, however, works when countries have strong institutions in place. The truth is, aid isn't evil, but it is complicated. When donors grow richer while recipients grow dependent, something is broken. So let's rethink not just how much we give, but how, to whom, and under what conditions. If you're curious or even conflicted about the real story behind aid, subscribe. Let's unpack the contradictions one episode at a time. Till the next time.